We were all told staycations. That word used to mean sitting in your own home and going on daily visits to staycation. Now it's going on a holiday here in Britain, which is, by the way, how we all spent our holidays until about 20 years ago. We're told busiest day of the year on the roads tomorrow. Gridlock expected. How bad is it going to get?
Oh, it's going to get pretty horrible if you are doing the kind of usual suspects, Julia. So if you're heading down to Devon and Cornwall, and the main way there, of course, is the M5 from Bristol, the Midlands, or the good old A303.
The joys of the
London
A303.
Yes, exactly. Then it's going to be pretty horrible this weekend. Friday, as you absolutely say, is going to be worst. The RAC has done some predicting, and they say 11 till 7 it's going to be miserable. They're also warning, of course, about the M25 around London and the M1 in the East Midlands. The East Midlands, not known as a very popular holiday destination, but there you are. Yes, and it's a similar story. I'm just doing some research on the railways. Always used to be the case before the pandemic that Monday to Thursday were the busiest days on the railways. Now it's completely changed. Friday, Saturday, Sunday are going to be the busy days. And you can expect large crowds in all the resorts and very high prices.
Yeah.
Just
Can I just say that on the railways, I love the fact there are all these people who think it's definitely not safe enough to go to commute, to go to work on the railways, but not a problem if they're going on holiday. Suddenly, again, COVID got the memo on that one. Look, what about the people who are hoping to travel to an airport and to get away? We've still got the issue where, all that good news from so-called Freedom Day on Monday, that we were told in advance that as of last Monday, basically amber list countries stopped being amber list countries to all intents and purposes for those who've been double jabbed and those who are under 18. Absolutely fine for, your sort of 40 pluses and their kids for travelling in and out without having to face 10-day quarantine. Not so good for those in their 20s and 30s who haven't got their second jab yet, or some of them even their first jab. But then, of course, we had throwing into the mix, just when we thought it was all clear, France became this new super amber plus territory where on the amber list, but you still have to quarantine, causing absolute chaos for, there were 500,000 families affected by that last weekend as it was. Now some talk that Spain and Greece, two of the big destinations for Brits in the summer holidays, could also be possibly facing that amber plus status. What's going on?
They could do. Well, the thing is that France was utterly inexplicable. It's a bit like, if you remember, do you remember that Portugal was abruptly taken off the green list? Okay. And that was because of the Nepali mutant, which nobody's heard of since, but that was the reason.
Well, no one in Nepal had heard of it, interestingly.
No. and also we've got the beta variant in France, which is a big problem in the overseas département of Réunion in the Indian Ocean. Lovely place to be, but they've got the beta variant there, and unfortunately their numbers go into the overall French numbers because it's part of France, and so it's quite inexplicable, really. The Amber Plus list, actually, I think you're probably not going to see additional European countries added to it. What you might see is that it could be a useful place to park places like the UAE and Turkey on their way in from red list status. So effectively, you don't just go straight from red list to, okay, everyone come in, it was fine, after all. You make people quarantine at home. So I think that's what they may use it for. But frankly, who knows? Yeah. Everything has been so weird, and the decisions are very difficult to kind of analyse.
Well, they're difficult to predict as well. That's where you get this massive big hit on the travel industry, because lots of people were saying, well, I'll only book at the last minute, but then, your plans being scuppered, and we were hoping to go to France in a few weeks' time. Family have all been out there, want to visit, and it's like, well, okay, we can't go to France, so where do we go? I was thinking, I've got to be honest, Spain and Greece look good. Oh, now they're not. Would we need to book on, say, a Thursday, wait for the next travel announcement, book on that day for where is still a possibility to go in the hope that it doesn't change in the next week? But we can't even predict these travel announcements now, can we? Because they're not always necessarily coming on the day they're supposed to come. Even the one last week, that was made a day early, which made a lot of us, I was out in Mallorca, a green watch list place to visit. And I thought, well, if it's coming on the Wednesday, not the Thursdays, does that mean they're going to bring in the quarantine a day early? Because people were saying, oh, it'll be Monday or Tuesday. What if it was Sunday? We were flying back on Sunday. Would we be flying back on the one day in a sort of 3-month 2 months period where we would have to quarantine for 10 days or not. And it's difficult to deal with. It's expensive with the testing. Most people can't afford the quarantine alike. But for most people, also the issue is they just can't take the risk.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it is. Look, unless you have an appetite for risk, unless you have flexibility, like I do, obviously, because my job is basically being on holiday pretending to work.
But this is what we say behind your back, and it's great that you're finally admitting that, Simon.
Unless you've got a kind of decent credit card limit so that you can cope with all the additional expense. It is a summer of great uncertainty. And the terrible thing is, look, we should now be, in a normal year, all we'd be doing is talking about, how busy the airports are going to be and what the most popular destinations are this year, because people are getting away on their well-deserved escapes. This year, we need escapes more than ever.
Oh, yes.
But it has never been more difficult. If you go back a year to July 2020, I went to France, to Italy. It was all very straightforward. You filled in a form going there, you filled in a form coming back. None of the testing or whatever. It's got more and more complicated.
And this is the thing. The vaccines were supposed to make life easier. So this is, we're not going to be safer than this. I keep pointing out to people. What is it that people are waiting for? And I think a lot of people would understand. Okay, you have to have a test to get in from the country, and I completely understand the red list. When there are countries that have got a new variant, we're on the other side of the world where we're not quite sure what's going. Are the figures accurate? Is there a variant? I can understand that they're requiring the quarantine for people coming in from those places. But the idea that various different variants travelling around Europe that are not going to make it into this country anyway, and the same argument would be given to those countries having with problems with us. Look, Australia's got closed borders and they have the Delta variant. I mean, everyone's going to have to get to grips with the fact that this virus doesn't actually obey these rules. It doesn't read the government websites. It doesn't know the rules. But the fact that we have less freedom this summer than we did last summer, I find quite bizarre.
Yes, and it might well be that the government has just thought, well, we've got to manage this and we can put in processes. How effective those processes are, it's difficult to say. Yeah. And of course, even when we say, I tell you what, right, we're adding, as happened last week, you're quite right, on a Wednesday, not a Thursday. That wasn't at all inconvenient for anybody, was it? When they said, right, 2 new quarantine-free places in Europe, Bulgaria and Croatia, well, it wasn't very long before Bulgaria said, you're not coming in here. Yeah. And Croatia have just said yesterday, right, you're going to have a test before you come in here. So it's only half of the picture. But even so, it is generally much, much tougher coming back into the UK than it is going to almost anywhere that will let you in.
Even though we've got a far greater rollout of the vaccines. Yeah, exactly. The main thing I think for most people is you simply, not just the insecurity, you have no idea where to get the information. You have to look at about 5 different government websites and you have to update them every hour to find out what the rules are. And in between, I mean, we only booked a couple of weeks before we were going, and we still had 2 or 3 different changes to what happened, both before we went, while we were there. It's quite absurd. And I think for most people, it's just impossible to work our way around. If there's one thing I would really love, you or anyone else who's so knowledgeable about this, could someone just have a website where it's a one-stop shop? What are the rules this week, next week, and the week after? What do people need? What do I need to get on a plane to go there? What do I need to come back? And what are the rules? Do I have to wear a mask when I'm there? Could someone please put that together and just help us out, Simon?